There are forces of good and forces of evil at work in the world today. What are these forces? Who is responsible for the good? And who is responsible for the evil? Richard Schaff talks about current events which are rarely discussed by the mainstream media, events that affect us all. This program seeks to identify, to inform, and to equip the believer for what's ahead. Welcome to What in the World is Going On?
As I record this, folks, and before we get on with our national news, I just want to make mention today, I'm recording this on the 7th of December. This is the 78th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. Just to remember it as you listen to this, what happened this weekend 78 years ago. I remember it as a young boy. In fact, it's the only thing I remember from that point of my age. I remember the announcement in the radio in the house that I was in Bradford, Pennsylvania, as our ships were attacked in the harbor in Hawaii. But now to our national news, and the number one topic of today, a warning. A warning of what? That impeachment, the impeachment procedure, is an illegitimate effort to overturn our votes. And we as patriots better start to prepare our republic from tyranny. Information on this came to me from Nation News, Dateline, on December 5th, just a couple days before I'm taping this. The U.S. House of Representatives is now a clear and present danger to each and every American citizen, those of us who freely cast a ballot in the 2016 election. The House is presently engaged in an effort to nullify our votes by impeaching our president without constitutionally required, quote, high crimes and misdemeanors, end quote. The Speaker recently, Pelosi, announced that they're prepared to move ahead despite the fact that the investigative hearings are not even over. Patriots should now prepare right now, get ready, to defend our republic from this tyrannical effort to overturn our freely cast ballots. The U.S. Constitution requires there be, quote, high crimes and misdemeanors, end quote, to impeach a duly elected president. There are none involving President Trump. I repeat, folks, there are none involving President Trump. Witness after witness at hearings of both the House Intelligence Committee and now in the House Judiciary Committee admitted under oath they've got no personal information regarding any of the material that accuses our president. Everything they testify about are under oath was either hearsay or opinion. Yet despite this absence of facts and complete absence of crimes, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi tweeted the following, quote, the president is a continuing threat to our democracy and leaves us no choice but to act. I'm asking our chairman to proceed with articles of impeachment. A quote from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The fact that Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi announced publicly, quote, the president is a continuing threat to our democracy and leaves us no choice but to ask, I'm asking our chairman to proceed with articles of impeachment, end quote. There you go, folks. There are no facts upon which to base such articles of impeachment, and it is flat-out tyranny. The Founding Fathers feared that such conditions might one day arise in our nation, and they gave us, the people, the Second Amendment to confront that tyranny. That's right, you heard me right. Now, it seems many people, many of us, to us, that the nation is fast approaching a point where such a confrontation may well be necessary. As such, patriots should prepare right now to do what they may have to do in the near future. The Declaration of Independence states clearly twice the inherent powers of the people to, quote, alter or abolish government, which is destructive of the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That inherent right is as valid today, listeners, as it was in 1776. The relevant portions of the Declaration read as follows, and again I'm quoting, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments have instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. end quote. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. We are even authorized to institute new government, laying down its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Later, the Founding Fathers put it even more bluntly, and I quote again, "Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they have become accustomed. But when a long train of abuses are pursued, invariably the same object evidence design to reduce them under absolute despotism. It is the people's right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security." Voiding our votes without the existence of constitutionality required high crimes and misdemeanors is not a light or transient cause. It is an abuse of our system of self-rule. It's absolute despotism. It is an abuse of congressional power. In the absence of any, quote, high crimes and misdemeanors is an absolute destruction of our votes. This is the very definition of tyranny. In the latter paragraph above that I just referenced, the Founding Fathers made clear it is the right and duty of citizens to, quote, throw off a destructive government. They wrote throw off, not to go and vote out, not peacefully petition, not protest. No, throw off. There's still time for this to be resolved peacefully and legally. We should hope and pray earnestly that the House of Representatives comes to its senses so no citizen action will become necessary. We should call, write, email, fax our representatives, urging them to come to their senses and stop this madness. We should also observe that today. December 8th, 2019 is just one day from the December 9th release date of the Inspector General's FISA abuse report. It's believed by many that when that report comes out, the crimes committed by Democrats during and after the 2016 presidential election will mortify the citizens. Maybe Speaker Pelosi is doing all of this to simply distract from these revelations. Maybe this entire impeachment sham will be abandoned by then, before or after the FISA abuse report comes out. The Democrats could say, oh goodness, we had no idea that such things have been done to our president. No wonder this man has been so rough. Now that the truth is out, we need to put all of this behind us and work together. Maybe, folks. Maybe not. At the same time, we must now prepare to alter or abolish this government and institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect our safety and happiness. Folks, we didn't choose this confrontation, and all of us still hope and pray it can be avoided. Sadly, we're also prepared, and we must be prepared to do what has to be done. Now is the time to begin your preparations. It now appears clear to many that this entire impeachment spectacle is nothing more than a diversion to keep the press and the public focused on Trump and ignore the actual crimes perpetrated by Democrats before, during, and after Trump was elected. This impeachment theater, this theater of the absurd, but with very real consequences. And this, folks, the election of Trump is Trump's to lose. As you all know, the election season's underway. Less than a year until the mother of all elections, November 2020. What do you think? Will Americans vote to keep America's great or toss 250 years of liberty and prosperity to the wind in favor of socialism? Do we want this to become another Venezuela? Is President Donald Trump headed for a second term, or will a deep state establishment thwart his re-election at any cost? Well, I personally think that the 2020 election is Trump's to lose, and so do a lot of others. Despite the media's endless claim that, quote, the walls are closing in on the president, and with every bit of news being a bombshell, and that impeachment is a foregone conclusion, a more objective look at the electoral landscape demonstrates that this is liberal projection. The media and their Democrat Party minions project their fantasies on Trump, when in reality the walls are closing in on them, and we can see it, can't we? Start with the polls. Rasmussen, the most accurate pollster predicting the 2016 election, tracks likely voters in their daily presidential tracking poll. These are the voters most probably deciding the 2020 election, as opposed to other polls that survey registered voters or eligible voters or whoever happens to answer the phone. As of November 8, 2019, Trump sat at 49% approval rating. That was compared to Obama, 45% at the exact same time point in their respective presidencies. We know who won the election in 2012, did it quite easily. Obama had mostly favorable media coverage, while Trump's coverage is almost entirely negative and hostile. We know that too, don't we? Yet half the likely voters approve of the job Trump is doing as president. You know, national polls are fine and good, but presidents are not elected by a national popular vote. That despite the wishes of Hillary Clinton and a few others. And as the actual election is a series of state elections called the Electoral College, how's Trump doing in the states necessary for him to win the Electoral College? Let's take a look at it. A New York Times survey of registered voters revealed, quote, President Trump remains highly competitive in the battleground states likeliest to decide his reelection, end quote. Trump's three rivals at this point, Biden, Sanders, and Warren. Biden's pay-to-play corruption is just beginning to come to light. If he's a nominee, there's going to be an onslaught of revelations involving Ukraine, China, Romania, and who knows where else. Sanders and Warren, with their budget-busting Medicare for All plans, even illegals, by the way, along with their Green New Deals, reparations, wealth taxes, and open borders, will make them unelectable in a general election. Another poll shows that Trump's approval ratings in battleground states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota higher than they were in 2016. Maybe the voters in those states are noticing the strong economy. As James Carville said during the Bill Clinton presidential campaign, quote, it's the economy, stupid. Here's the economy. How's it doing right now? Hey, just last Friday, we saw the results. Record low unemployment, particularly for women and minorities. Raising family incomes, a stock market hitting new highs every week. Just take a look at it. If the economy stays on track, Trump is, quote, on course to win re-election in 2020, according to economic models with a track record of predicting who wins the White House. This is based on three economic models, also assuming a stable economy, steady approval ratings, and a voter turnout consistent with past elections. And then we got the enthusiasm factor. Trump rallies are packed with supporters. Did you see down in Louisiana? They had about 7,500 in attendance with more than 40,000 requesting tickets and supporters lining up Tuesday afternoon for a Wednesday evening event. Yeah, every rally he holds, people waiting in the lines. Oh yeah, the Hail Mary passes now in the fourth quarter of Trump's first term. They are attempting to stop the inevitable of a second Trump term in the White House. That's why they're going after impeachment. They haven't got anybody that they think has a chance to beat him. From the polls to the bumbling plots of the Democrat Keystone Cops, the media is trying everything possible to overturn the election. That's why they're pushing so hard for impeachment. Nothing seems to be going in their direction. Meanwhile, Trump's base of support is solid, and Trump himself is relaxed, confident, and comfortable. CNN wants everyone to believe their daily warnings that, quote, the walls are closing in on the president, but the reality that this upcoming election is his to lose. And knowing how Trump likes to win, the smart money suggests he's going to just do that. Now, we're going to come up with some points that we have to worry about. And what are they? They're the economy, folks. They're the economy. Going to bring you some articles right now to point this out. I'll be referencing them. This one comes to me from Don McElvaney. The biggest danger is the economy. The Democrats' coup against the Trump presidency could very well destabilize everything. McAvaney points out that the political chaos the Democrats are unleashing to overthrow Trump is going to have a huge downside impact on all financial markets at some point, especially if their impeachment efforts should prove to be successful. The political chaos they are intentionally causing in their anti-Trump witch hunt is going to trigger financial chaos and is even now creating uncertainty and a gust in the global markets. Gold will be the ultimate beneficiary, and if their impeachment efforts fail, the deep state manipulators are likely to try to precipitate a financial panic and a market crash that will all be blamed on Trump and his policies. And listen to this, folks, according to McAvaney, if all else fails, they may well opt for the JFK option that they utilized 55 years ago. Two warnings from people that are very knowledgeable. Going to reference both of them. First one comes to me, Michael Snyder. It comes through Greg Hunter, USAWatchdog.com. Y'all know that Snyder is a journalist, a book author, and he points out that the corporate debt is now at record highs, standing at $10 trillion. Snyder points out debt is setting records in every aspect of the economy and contends, quote, if you include all other forms of corporate debt not listed on the stock exchanges, that brings a total to $15.5 trillion, which is the equivalent to 74% of our GDP. And folks, according to Snyder, we've never seen anything like this before in all of U.S. history. And he says this is just one form of the debt and how our society has grown the debt. People need to realize, he said, the only reason why we have any prosperity in this country today is because it is fueled by debt. We've been building up this bubble, and it's a bubble to end all bubbles, he notes. Look at consumers. U.S. consumers are now $14 trillion in debt, which is an all-time record. State and local governments are at all-time debt records. The U.S. government, we just hit $23 trillion in debt, more than double since the last financial meltdown. We are stealing from future generations more than $100 million every single hour of every single day and night. Folks, this is a crime beyond comprehension, and it's been going on for more than a decade. All this debt has bought us more time. What has happened? We've expanded the bubble for relative stability. Meanwhile, we're literally committing national suicide and literally destroying the future of our country and the future of this republic. We are destroying everything the founders built by insatiable greed, and we're doing it in this generation. Snyder says you don't have to wait for the next recession because it's already started. He also points out eventually this whole thing is going to come crashing down. Now, when will it happen? He says it's happening right now. Let's hope that it doesn't happen before the Trump re-election. This thing is not sustainable. Here in the United States, we are already in a manufacturing recession, Snyder points out. We're already in a transportation recession. We're already in a corporate earnings recession. We're already in trouble that he's documented regularly on his own website. We're already seeing dozens of data points that an economic slowdown is already happening. This is what we'll notice first. We will go into a recession, and things are going to start getting bad. But beyond that, we're headed for the greatest of depressions. It's the perfect storm. We're talking about the breakdown of trade with China. We've witnessed the complete and total breakdown of relations between the United States and China already. China, view us, Americans, as their primary global enemy. So there's not going to be any kind of comprehensive trade agreement. You can forget that, according to Snyder. You can forget that. It's been one of the only things holding the stock market up. Snyder says no trade deal will cause the stock market to lose hope for the future. Snyder predicts that stocks will fall at least back to their long-term averages, which is 40 to 50% lower than they are today. He also says, and I'm quoting him, the system is failing. People that have faith in Wall Street, people that have faith in Washington, people that have faith in the Federal Reserve and in their system, ultimately, they are going to be extremely, extremely disappointed. Most Americans are going to be blindsided by this, and most Americans have no idea what's coming. Absolutely no idea. We're not just talking about Mad Max, he notes. We're not just talking about Armageddon. What we're looking at here is the end of America. In the long term, if you want to prepare, you need to prepare for the total destruction of our country. You see, what's happening? What's happening is if we do lose the Trump presidency, take a look at what the other side has promised us. Complete socialism. And this comes to me from Brandon Smith. He notes that the masses are being conditioned to ignore the economic bubble. This was Dateline Wednesday, December 4th, 2019. Now, the article written by Brandon Smith that I'm referencing from was originally published at Birch Gold Group. Okay? Smith notes that in the second week of September, after the partial U.S.-China trade deal was announced, this all to much fanfare, he made this prediction. Quote, U.S. and Chinese official really waste an opportunity to use trade talk headlines to head fake markets with false hope. Rumors of a partial or tentative trade deal are circulating right now, with more trade talks in a month or two. In other words, more trade talks means there is no deal of any substance, and there's plenty of time for the whole thing to fall apart once again. I give it less than a month, he notes. In the meantime, there will be plenty of other distractions for the general public, including the impeachment circus, tariffs against Europe, tensions in Syria, the Brexit mess, so on. His estimate was correct. It was incorrect, he points. It took a little over 1 month for the whole thing to fall apart from last October. They said, I think the primary point remains the same. The trade war is not going to end anytime soon, and there's a very good reason why this is the case. It serves the globalist agenda as a perfect distraction for the collapse of the everything bubble and the launch of the global economic reset into what the elites call a new world order. Let's go back for a moment to understand just what happened. A month ago, the trade deal was treated as essentially done. China had partially folded on most of Trump's demands, and Trump was going to pull off a major economic victory just in time for the 2020 election season. The Dow was going to rocket past 30,000, and Trump's second term was now assured. This was the narrative in the majority of the alternate media. And, Smith points out, he had to say it was sad to see so many otherwise intelligent analysis make such a huge blunder. He notes that he's lost track of how many times the trade war was put on hold in light of an optimistic New Deal, and how many times people brought into the force. For many, this event seemed different. The rhetoric on both sides was more conciliatory, and they even had a tentative date set for a phase one deal signing. The problem is that after every deal announcement, the establishment has always left at least a few separate linchpins in place that would allow them to explode trade deals down the road. A year ago, the linchpin was the arrest of the CEO of that Hawaiian company, Highway. Well, that happened in the middle of a 90-day truce. This time, it was the U.S. passage of a bill supporting Hong Kong protesters. That happened just a week or two ago, just before the trade deal was to be signed, and before the new U.S. tariffs were to be implemented against China. The Hong Kong issue is an interesting one. But let's not get too involved in the domestic politics of Hong Kong versus China, because this is a peripheral to the biggest discussion. We could say that if we were now living in Hong Kong, we would probably we would not want to concede further control of the totalitarian aspirations of mainland China. But the U.S. involvement doesn't help the protesters. In fact, it may be hurting them. Americans should be intimately familiar with this problem. Conservative activist groups have been accused for years of being puppets of the Russian government. And this is clearly designed to undermine their image as true Americans fighting for a freer society. In Hong Kong, the U.S. is being presented as the foreign power whose tentacles are spreading through every facet of the protest. And even if the Hong Kong rebellion started on honest terms as a real domestic response to Chinese Big Brother collectivism, it doesn't matter now. The U.S. government has sabotaged those efforts by injecting itself into the situation. U.S. legislation in support of Hong Kong also wrecks any future possibility of a trade deal because it directly attaches the Trump administration and the trade talks to the violent tides in Hong Kong. Trump cannot sign a trade deal with China while China brutalizes protesters. And China cannot sign a deal with the U.S. while Trump encourages what they consider domestic terrorism. Even if one side or the other wanted to capitulate, it's now impossible. Of course, neither side ever had any intention of signing a trade deal. They didn't have it in the first place. They don't have it now. So where are we at, folks? Well, currently it appears that the December phase one is off the record. It won't happen. We'll watch and see what happens. But in summary, let me conclude this. If there's no trade deal, in all likelihood our stock market will go down. If in all likelihood the stock market goes down, we may well see what many are predicting as a Great Depression coming to the United States. And that's the only thing that could bring down the re-election of our president. If we lose President Trump, who do you see on the other side that you could be comfortable with? Do you see anybody out there that would take us any place except to more deficit spending? That would take us any place but total socialism? Open borders? Medicaid, Medicare for all, even including illegals? No more border patrol? Bring them all in, let them all vote? Venezuela, here we come. Folks, 2020, the mother of all elections, better find you and me on our knees, praying for God's intervention in this time of peril for our republic. It's not just Republican, it's not just Democrat, it's not just conservative and liberal. No, folks, it's destiny time. It's Armageddon time. It's time for our prayers to go up for our republic and our president. Goodbye until next week.